At the start of the movie, we meet Alexei, a skilled pilot attempting to save his aircraft from disaster. The plane's engine is engulfed in flames, and his superiors urgently instruct him to eject and abandon the craft. Defying orders, Alexei chooses to stay on board. He shuts down the engine, waits for the flames to subside, and then successfully restarts it, managing to land the plane safely. Shortly after, the focus shifts to Sergei, a brilliant spacecraft designer on his way to Europe to lead an ambitious project. Sergei is spearheading a mission to send humans into space and discusses the plan with his team, emphasizing the urgency to achieve this feat before 1965 to outpace the United States in the space race. The mission requires the preparation of two spacecraft. The first, a prototype named Paste Object, and the second, Moscow 2, which will carry cosmonauts on the historic journey. After careful consideration, the team selects two exceptional pilots, Alexei and Pavel, to take on this monumental task. The next day, we see Alexei and Pavel aboard a plane preparing for a skydiving exercise. As they converse, they reflect on their reasons for pursuing the dangerous and groundbreaking mission of going to space. Suddenly, Alexei leaps from the aircraft without warning, prompting Pavel to follow suit moments later. While skydiving, Pavel catches up to Alexei mid-air, and both eventually deploy their parachutes, safely descending to the ground. However, during the landing, Pavel injures his leg and is rushed to the hospital. This development causes significant concern for the mission, leaving the team leader, Nikolai, deeply frustrated. In an attempt to defuse the situation, Alexei admits to Nikolai that Pavel's injury wasn't his fault. It was Alexei's decision to jump first, which pressured Pavel to follow. Despite Alexei's defense, Nikolai informs him that the mission cannot be delayed. To ensure progress, Nikolai decides to replace Pavel with another pilot, Yuri. This news leaves Alexei disheartened. Determined to support his friend, Alexei visits Pavel in the hospital. In an effort to motivate him, Alexei locks a heavy metal ball onto a stretcher and urges Pavel to lift it using his injured leg to speed up his recovery. Pavel reluctantly agrees, but when the rope securing the ball snaps, the weight crashes onto the bed, causing Pavel severe pain. Furious, Pavel demands Alexei leave. The following day, training resumes with Alexei and Yuri. Dressed in their spacesuits, they practice maneuvering in zero-gravity conditions and entering the airlock. However, Alexei finds the standard-issue suit cumbersome and ill-suited for the mission's demands. Frustrated, he approaches Sergei and presents a custom-designed spacesuit he had created himself. Although innovative, the scientists reject Alexei's design, explaining that producing such a suit would take at least 2 years. They insist the team must use the existing suits despite their shortcomings. Meanwhile, Pavel is relentlessly pushing himself to recover and rejoin the mission. Despite repeated warnings from his doctors to avoid strenuous activity, he continues to exercise his injured leg, determined to regain full mobility. His unwavering commitment eventually leads to his discharge from the hospital. Through sheer perseverance and grueling effort, Pavel works his way back to the team, eager to prove himself ready for the mission. Amid Pavel's recovery, a tragic incident occurs at the space agency. A technician working on the spacecraft dies from an electric shock while handling equipment. The accident sends shockwaves through the team. Sergei instructs the senior scientist to investigate the cause immediately, emphasizing the importance of safety for the upcoming mission. As Pavel returns to the team, Alexei confronts him privately. Concerned for his friend's well-being, Alexei tries to dissuade Pavel from continuing, arguing that he's still not fit enough for the mission. Pavel undergoes a series of rigorous tests but fails to meet the necessary standards, further fueling Alexei's doubts. Witnessing Pavel's struggles leaves Alexei deeply conflicted and sympathetic, knowing how much the mission means to his friend. Determined not to give up, Pavel intensifies his efforts. Alexei, unable to suppress his concern, confronts Lieutenant Nikolai and Sergei during a team briefing. He passionately advocates for Pavel to be given another chance to join the mission, citing his dedication and potential. However, Sergei remains unmoved, insisting that the mission cannot accommodate risks, and dismisses Alexei's plea. Unfazed by the rejection, Pavel doubles down on his training. He undergoes a complete medical evaluation and passes all required tests, demonstrating his readiness to return to active duty. This achievement earns him a place back on the mission, much to Alexei's relief and pride. With the crew finalized, the intense training regimen resumes. Alexei focuses on mastering movements in the spacecraft's airlock under zero-gravity conditions, practicing precision and control. Meanwhile, Pavel works tirelessly inside the spacecraft, familiarizing himself with the controls and procedures. The duo trains rigorously, gradually building synergy and confidence in each other's capabilities. After weeks of relentless preparation, the training culminates successfully, marking a pivotal milestone for the team. The long-awaited launch day finally arrives. As part of the mission plan, the team first launches launches a test module to assess the spacecraft's performance. This unmanned test is critical. If the spacecraft returns successfully, it will confirm the module's safety and readiness for human travel. Meanwhile, a documentary is created to highlight Alexei and Pavel's journey, including heartfelt interviews with their families, showcasing their sacrifices and dreams. The test spacecraft successfully reaches orbit, but soon after, the signal from the module abruptly ceases, leaving the scientists unable to track or communicate with it. This unforeseen complication forces the mission leaders to abort further plans temporarily, plunging the team into uncertainty. In the aftermath, Sergei meets Alexei and Pavel at their hotel to discuss the situation. He explains that launching Moscow 2 inches with a crew under current conditions would be far too dangerous. Sergei proposes sending the spacecraft unmanned for further testing, postponing their manned mission by a year to allow time for improved technology and safety measures. Alexei is visibly disheartened by this decision. He shares a deeply personal story, revealing that he nearly died from pneumonia at the age of 3. During that time, his family was declared enemies of the state, forcing them into poverty. Their neighbors seized their home, furniture, and food, leaving Alexei's family homeless and struggling to survive. Despite these hardships, his family persevered, with his pregnant mother enduring unimaginable difficulties to ensure they could keep moving forward. He emphasizes to Sergei and the senior scientists that delays and fear of risk have never stopped him, and they shouldn't stop the mission now. Pavel supports Alexei's plea, expressing his unwavering willingness to face the dangers. Together, they convince Sergei to proceed with the original plan, despite the inherent risks. Inspired by their determination, Sergei agrees to send them into space aboard Moscow 2. On March 8, 1965, Alexei and Pavel arrive at the Moscow 2 launch station, where they are met with a warm reception and words of encouragement. After final preparations, the two board the spacecraft, their faces reflecting a mix of resolve and excitement. At exactly 10 a.m., the spacecraft launches, climbing steadily into the sky. Moments later, Moscow 2 inches successfully enters Earth's orbit, marking a groundbreaking achievement for humanity. This monumental event becomes the center of global attention, with people across the world glued to their radios and televisions, watching and listening as the first humans prepare to venture into the vastness of space. In the next scene, Alexei and Pavel follow Sergei and Konstantin's instructions to enter the airlock. Alexei steps out into the vast expanse of space, tasked with removing the cover from the spacecraft's camera. As he completes the task, the live feed begins broadcasting stunning images of space to the world, captivating audiences back on Earth. After taking several breathtaking photographs, Alexei ventures a little further from the spacecraft. Suddenly, the pressure inside his suit begins to rise uncontrollably, causing him to lose balance. He collides with the spacecraft and is sent drifting away into the void. The broadcast is abruptly cut, leaving the scientists and mission control in a state of panic. Alexei's communication link fails, severing his contact with the ground team. As Alexei drifts farther from the spacecraft, Pavel desperately tries to re-establish contact but gets no response. Acting on Sergei's urgent orders, Pavel prepares to exit the airlock and retrieve Alexei. Meanwhile, Alexei manages to regain some control and slowly makes his way back toward the spacecraft, despite the challenges of low oxygen and limited mobility. With great effort, he reaches the airlock and secures the camera inside. However, Alexei notices that the airlock door is still open. Using the last of his strength, he moves to close it, but the oxygen level in his suit drops critically low, causing him to lose consciousness. At this crucial moment, Pavel rushes into the airlock, retrieves Alexei, and brings him back inside the spacecraft. After administering emergency assistance, Pavel successfully revives Alexei, and the two breathe a sigh of relief, grateful to have survived the harrowing ordeal. Once their safety is confirmed, Sergei reestablishes contact with the crew and expresses his immense relief and pride. He instructs them to detach the airlock module from the spacecraft, which they carefully execute. Sergei informs them that the spacecraft will orbit the Earth 15 times over the next 22 hours before reaching the designated landing zone. With their immediate task complete, he advises them to take some well-deserved rest after the intense sequence of events. As the crew rests, the scene shifts to 20 hours later when an urgent issue arises. Oxygen is leaking from the spacecraft. The cosmonauts quickly detect the problem and notify mission control. Sergei, upon hearing the report, instructs them to switch off the spacecraft's lights immediately to reduce the risk of a fire, as the atmosphere inside the cabin consists of pure oxygen. After a brief investigation, Sergei identifies the cause. A small crack in the spacecraft is causing the oxygen loss. Although the computer system has automatically begun replenishing the air, the crack must be sealed manually to prevent further complications. Following Sergei's instructions, Alexei and Pavel attempt to address the issue. They switch off the oxygen detector system to locate the crack, but the task becomes increasingly challenging. The confined space is filled with tangled wires, and the diminishing oxygen levels make it harder to work. Pavel succumbs to to the lack of oxygen and collapses. Despite the dire situation, Alexei presses on, navigating through the maze of wires to reach the detector. Sergei guides him over the radio, instructing him to remove a specific yellow wire to stop the oxygen pump and seal the leak. Just as Alexei begins to follow the instructions, he too loses consciousness. Back at mission control, the team is on edge, anxiously awaiting updates. The spacecraft's automatic landing system is activated, leaving the crew's fate uncertain. Meanwhile, Alexei experiences a vivid dream. He is a small child in a grassy field, watching a bird. The bird suddenly attacks him, jolting him awake. Regaining consciousness, Alexei finds the strength to remove the yellow wire, successfully stopping the leak. With just 25 minutes left before the spacecraft's automatic descent, Alexei and Pavel manage to re-establish contact with mission control. They request permission for a manual landing, but the spacecraft is currently orbiting above U.S. territory, enemy airspace during this tense period of the Cold War. The request sparks heated debate among the officials, with many advising against the risk. However, Sergei refuses to abandon the cosmonauts. Defying opposition, he authorizes the manual landing and guides them step by step. Alexei and Pavel align the spacecraft toward Earth's trajectory and initiate the descent. As they enter Earth's gravitational pull, they separate the engine module from the main capsule. The intense heat of re-entry causes the spacecraft to ignite, burning through the atmosphere at an incredible speed like a blazing meteor. What remains is the landing capsule, carrying Alexei and Pavel, which deploys its parachutes and begins to slow its descent. Finally, the capsule lands in the rugged Ural Mountains in the Soviet Union. As the dust settles, the hatch opens, and Alexei and Pavel emerge, exhausted but alive. 3 hours after Alexei and Pavel's landing, the government begins searching for the cosmonauts. Meanwhile, Alexei and Pavel are stranded in an unknown location. To stay warm, they light a fire and attempt to send a signal to mission control using their transmitter. However, instead of reaching the bureau, their signal is intercepted by a radio enthusiast on Shetland Island. The enthusiast decodes the message and realizes it's from the missing cosmonauts. 6 hours pass and the search team still hasn't located them. The bureau, assuming the worst, prepares a report stating that the cosmonauts likely perished when their parachute landed in mud during the descent. Meanwhile, Alexei ventures out with a flare gun, firing into the sky in the hope that someone will spot them. With no results, he returns to Pavel, who is trying to rest despite the freezing conditions caused by the snow around them. 9 hours after the landing, the situation grows more desperate. The radio enthusiast contacts the space agency with the cosmonauts' approximate location. A search team is dispatched by helicopter, but bad weather and low fuel make it hard to locate the pair. The team radios Sergei, informing him they need to turn back. Just as hope begins to fade, Alexei spots the helicopter. He fires his flare gun into the sky, catching their attention. The search team finds and rescues both Alexei and Pavel. The next day, Alexei and Pavel safely arrive in Moscow by airplane, where they are greeted with a hero's welcome. The film ends on a triumphant note, celebrating their survival and the historic achievement of human space exploration. This movie, Spacewalker, is based on true events during the 1960s Cold War between the USA and the Soviet Union. It highlights the incredible challenges and courage involved in the race to send humans into space. And with that, the story concludes. Bye-bye.